Hello everyone and welcome to our Couch Conversations. Today we have Dr. Raphaella Stander, who is a general paediatrician, joining us to talk about children's health, pregnancy, basically all the life stages and what to do in order to maintain your health and what supplements to take.
Thanks for having me.
Rafi, if I can call you Rafi, and I are both mums of 3. Call us crazy or lucky, but we both have 3 young children, and I think we can agree that this winter has kicked off horrendously with sicknesses. I mean, we had this conversation that essentially our kids have been sick for the last 2 months, and it's not even midwinter yet. So I guess my first question is this normal? Do we want them to get sick often? And what should we do to mitigate this?
Yeah, I mean, our kids have been really sick this winter, but I feel like we say that every year. Being young, they are going to have multiple viruses. It's part of the process. And I think I'll start with your first question. So, I mean, in the younger years, they are going to be exposed to viruses. It's also part of the environment they're in. They're at creche, they're at school. When I walk into the classroom, the kids have got snot hanging out their noses. They've got fevers. No one really cares anymore. Everyone sends their kids to school sick. So they are constantly being exposed. And I mean, it's part of growing up. In the early years, you have to be exposed, and then you sort of develop immunity to these viruses, and then they become less severe with each exposure.
Mm-hmm. So by what age do you think they're more resilient? So I remember reading that every 2 weeks they're exposed to a different virus. Is that correct?
Sometimes even multiple viruses at once. I mean, sometimes we will swab a child's nose and they'll have 5 or 6 viruses at the same time.
Oh.
So it's not just they get exposed and then they get better and then get exposed. They're often exposed to multiple pathogens at once. But it's all part of the immune system recognizing these viruses and then building immunity and tolerance to these viruses. So once you've seen a virus, you have memory to it and you can fight it again. And by the time you're 5, you've probably been exposed to most childhood illnesses. Okay. But I mean, that doesn't say you're not going to get sick after 5.
Sure.
It's just you've probably got a better immune system to fight.
Okay, so it's good to know that it's normal for them to get sick often and that they don't necessarily have compromised immune systems, but what can we do to strengthen their immune systems? And everyone's talking about gut health and, how connected gut health is to immune health. So maybe you can just touch on that a bit as well.
We talk about strengthening a child's immune system, but it actually starts very early on, and it really starts with the concept of the first 1,000 days, which I think is nice. We can sort of go through the stages. So we talk about preconception, pregnancy, and then the first 2 years. So the first 1,000 days, that concept is from preconception up until your child is 2 years old.
Okay, that's interesting. So let's maybe start with preconception. So if we're talking about strengthening your child's immune system, preconception means that it then comes from the mum, right?
Exactly. So pre-falling pregnant, you want to have a good immune system, but also just general good nutrition. So that's why we talk about having folate pre-pregnancy. Your key nutrients at this point are folate, vitamin D, and iron. And those are all really important if you want to have a healthy pregnancy. And just to explain a little bit about the folate story is that, your child's nervous system and neural tube is all formed in those first 3 to 4 weeks. And that first trimester is the most important time for nervous system development. So that folate is actually covering those first trimester.
So 3 to 4 weeks, you often don't even know you're pregnant.
Exactly. So that's why it's preconception.
Okay.
So you should be on folate before falling pregnant.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Okay, so you've got your folate, you've got your iron, probably vitamin C as well. You said vitamin D. So if you're looking to fall pregnant, it's important that your levels of all of those nutrients are adequate. And then you are pregnant already. Hopefully you've been on your folate, your child's neural tube development is up to scratch. Then what?
So where are we? We are pregnant.
We're now pregnant.
So you're on all your multivits, and now we're going to have a baby.
Okay, so prenatal multivitamin.
Yes.
How does a prenatal multivitamin differ to a normal multivitamin?
Hard question.
Oh, sorry.
But I mean, I can
more
comment.
Iron, right? Folate, maybe.
No, but you should actually take your folate separately to your prenatal.
Okay.
And actually, they say after your first trimester, you can drop your folate. So you don't really need it after trimester 1 because all of the nervous system has been fully formed. But really the most important thing is iron. But your gynae also monitors this throughout your pregnancy. That iron is really important in brain development for the fetus, and also the actual immune system of your fetus is very dependent on iron.
Okay, so we're tying back to immune health. Let's not get off the point there. So iron's important for your immunity and then for your child's immunity and development. So we're pregnant, we're taking a prenatal multivitamin, we're taking iron. We are now in the second trimester, we've dropped the folate, and now we are in our third trimester. If I remember correctly, omega-3 is also incredibly important. Perhaps less for immune health, maybe more for the baby's development.
For brain health. So very important for baby's brain health, and also generally good for you.
And those are all safe to take during pregnancy?
Totally safe, and you could also eat them in the form of, like, you want to be eating omega-3 rich foods, so like choline in eggs, meat, walnuts,
fatty
fish, all those things.
Okay, so obviously a healthy lifestyle is important for this, and that is a balanced diet, that is stress relief. So
very important,
meditation.
you said stress release, because actually high levels of cortisol can be very damaging to your fetus. So, I mean, mindfulness, yoga, all those things are really important to a healthy pregnancy.
And then in the third trimester, you mentioned something, in previous discussions about vaccines. I didn't have any vaccines in any of my third trimesters, so please enlighten me in what this is about.
Yeah, so we're focusing on immune health, and I mean, vaccines are part of building that immunity. So the whole concept of vaccinating a pregnant woman is actually there to protect the fetus. So when you get a vaccine in the third trimester, you have enough time to form antibodies, and you pass those antibodies across the placenta to your baby.
Okay.
And I think a lot of vaccines are eventually going to shift this way, that we're going to vaccinate mothers to protect babies in those early years. Because when we vaccinate our children, it's like from birth and up until 14 weeks are like the early ones. But before that, you're not really fully protected. But by vaccinating in pregnancy, you protect your baby for the first 6 months. So the ones that we have available at the moment are things like pertussis, because we're not fully vaccinated for pertussis until 14 weeks.
What is pertussis?
Whooping cough.
Okay.
So you can get that in your last trimester, and that gives baby protection from pertussis. And then the other one is influenza, because you can't give the flu vaccine to a child under 6 months. So it actually protects them in those first 6 months.
So there's controversy around vaccinations, obviously. You have your anti-vaxxers, you have your pro-vaxxers. Is it safe to get these vaccinations when you're pregnant?
It is safe. If you're looking at pregnant women, it's one of the hardest groups to study. Obviously, the ethics and all of that behind it, but there have been loads of clinical trials where they've proven safety in these vaccines. So
RSV is, and has been for quite a while now, a hot topic, and it seems like every winter, every child gets RSV, and it's, if I remember right, it stays in your system for even up to a year, and these kids get sick over and over again. Am I correct with that? And is there a vaccination for pregnant moms for RSV?
Yeah, so RSV is respiratory syncytial virus, and it's usually there's a seasonal peak in it, so it starts in Feb, but we've had a very long season this year, and it's really dangerous for the young kids, so the kids under 1. Over 1, most kids they go to school and they get exposed, and they usually have just a snotty nose, but it's the really young kids, the kids with cardiac lesions, the kids with chronic lung disease, compromised immune systems that suffer. There is a vaccine in development that can be given to pregnant women that will then protect their future babies. These are still in clinical trials, but they are actually, they're not really vaccines. They're called monoclonal antibodies that are available in South Africa, and those are used for the high risk children, so premature babies, children with heart lesions. They actually qualify for these vaccines that protects them in that first year.
Okay, so now we have had our baby. We have this beautiful child, newborn. All three. You have this beautiful child, all three, and you want to help support their immune system between newborn and age 2. So, diet, lifestyle, supplementation, what do we need to do? What do we need to be aware of? Taking into consideration that pregnant mum was very good and very healthy.
Great. I think you can't talk about the immune system without talking about breastfeeding, because it's full of immune cells. So breast milk is full of antibodies, it's full of prebiotics, postbiotics. It's really just this amazing
nutritional powerhouse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's probably your best thing for immunity in those early years. But then we can't all breastfeed, and that's totally fine. And today's times, formula has been so well studied, and they've made them so nutritionally similar to breast milk. There's the addition of HMOs, which are human milk oligosaccharides. So we've come a long way from our formulas, and really, like I say, breast or formula, either or, is actually good for your child's immune system, full of all the good stuff.
And then do you need to supplement that with anything? And if you do, from what age?
Exactly. So there are, again, our key nutrients that we should supplement. A big one is vitamin D. So the American Association of Pediatrics, they supplement vitamin D from birth. The World Health Organization, they usually say in populations where vitamin D levels are low. I think our vitamin D levels here are actually relatively low in South Africa, even though we have lots of sunshine.
Is that due to skin tone? It's because the darker skins absorb, don't get as much sunlight and absorb vitamin D less efficiently. Is that right?
Yes, and often it's hard to get enough vitamin D from our diets as well.
Okay, so supplementing vitamin D.
So vitamin D is one of the key ones.
Drops, I guess, with babies, and sprays or gummies as they get older.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the other key nutrient in those early years is iron. And that's, I don't know if you've heard of something called the iron gap.
No.
It's also a really nice concept, because if you think about, you as a pregnant woman have taken your iron supplements, and you've given out all those stores to your baby as they're growing. And then, that's why preterm babies are actually at risk of iron deficiency, because they don't have, your iron stores are mostly in that last trimester.
Okay.
And then you're born with all your iron stores, and then in your first 2 years of life, you grow the fastest you'll ever grow. And then you use those iron stores to grow. So it starts like, if you look at a graph, it would start up here, your iron stores, and then you sort of like dip to a nadir. And then at that point, you're about 4 to 6 months, and that's when we should be introducing complementary feeds.
Okay.
But you know what it's like trying to feed a toddler in the beginning.
Sure.
I mean, how much goes in the mouth and how much is...
Yeah, it's all over the floor.
Everywhere else. So getting enough iron-rich foods in takes a long time. So we call it the big iron gap. The other thing that's contributing to that big iron gap is we know that breast milk has very little iron in.
Okay.
So there's this big gap between 4 and 6 months of getting enough iron in. There's not enough iron in breast milk, so we really suggest supplementing iron from the age of 4 to 6 months.
And can you just give your child iron between 4 and 6 months, or do you have to test for that beforehand?
No.
Are you doing harm by giving your child iron?
No. So we suggest if you're treating like prophylactically, so you know that there's going to be this gap, you're not treating iron deficiency. So we suggest doing iron like Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay.
And then you sort of all 3 days a week, and then you actually are not going to give too much iron. But even your body knows what to do. If you're taking too much iron, you will not absorb it.
Okay, perfect. So we've got iron, we've got vitamin D, breast milk or formula, one of the newer ones with HMOs in them. And now our children are 2, and they've had their biggest growth time, but still I think we can agree there's a lot of growth between age, say, 2 and 6. So what do we need to focus on now in terms of diet, lifestyle, and obviously supplementation?
So again, nutrition, just a well-balanced diet. We get so many of our vitamins from what we eat. Not often easy getting our 2-year-olds to eat healthy, balanced diets.
Yeah.
So for our picky eaters, we usually suggest a supplement and any good multivitamin.
Okay. So something I've struggled quite a lot with my kids is omegas. So that's also quite important, right, for their brain development. And a lot of the omegas really taste fishy, and I can't get those into my children. So a multivitamin with an omega-3 is obviously important. And then does the iron, now we've like kind of bridged that gap. So we don't necessarily need to supplement with iron when they're 2+.
So at this point, we'd only be supplementing those that are iron deficient.
Okay, so a multivitamin, you're pretty much
good
covered.
Multivitamin, good diet as best as we can.
Okay.
And lifestyle stuff.
Okay. So exercise, I vaguely remember that it's something like 2 hours a day exercising is like healthy for a child. Is that right?
And I mean, our kids are so busy that they actually, you really want to limit screen time and not have them on a couch watching TV all day.
Yeah. Some of the questions we got from our community really dig into like the toddler years and picky eaters, because I think that's something that resonates with mums and that everyone really struggles with. And we mentioned, the food landing on the floor and, just making sure that your child gets the right nutrition. So a multivitamin is going to be incredibly important and useful, but you still want your child to be getting enough nutrition in order to foster their growth. So do you have any tips when it comes to picky eaters? And like, what have you done with your 3 children to make sure that they're getting what they need?
So I think moms are, we maternal and we want to like foster healthy children, but you can become obsessed with what your kids eat. And I think that also creates like a difficult environment. I always say your kids can control 3 things in life: what they eat, where they sleep, and where they wee and poo. So if you try to control those things too much, it's going to cause like a fight.
Yeah.
With food, I generally say, don't focus on every single meal. Look at what kids eat across a span of a week. And actually, they're pretty good at regulating themselves. So they might eat a bag of chips one day and then eat a whole bunch of sweets. But across the week, they've actually eaten a good varied diet. So don't look at it at each meal. Kids are really good at regulating themselves. They will eat the things that make them feel good across the week.
Yeah, and I think just something that I've noticed with my kids is actually just not to let them snack too much. Because if they're having these snacks the whole time, they're not going to eat their proper meals. And if they're hungry enough, they will eat.
Exactly. Sometimes they forget they're hungry. You have to remind them.
Yeah. So how about magnesium for kids? So, we get questions all the time from moms that are struggling with their kids that, aren't sleeping. And they're like, oh, can I give this to my child? So, we obviously have a range of gummies for children, and we have sprays that can be given to children. We have magnesium that comes in a sachet that can be given to children. So, what do you advise when it comes to magnesium with children, and can it be given to kids to, facilitate relaxation and sleep?
Yeah, I think that's a great point you've just made, because people are obsessed with children's sleep. And the first thing they go to is melatonin, which is actually not very safe in kids unless it's been approved by your paediatrician. That magnesium is. And it's actually it's a really useful
tool.
Yeah, it's actually great for constipation and for sleep. So I need some of those sachets. Do you?
Absolutely, we'll chat. So another question we had is the spike in illnesses amongst kids. Does it have anything to do with COVID and post-COVID?
Sure. It's a difficult question. I'm going to try answer the best I can. I think we just forget that our kids are sick like this every year. So every year there's a flu season. Every year there's an RSV season. And every year we say the same thing. It's worse than the year before, but I think we just forget. But there was, during COVID, we were all masked. We were all at home. And there was this period where we weren't being exposed. And at that point, my understanding of it is that you then lose some of that herd immunity. So, you have antibodies to RSV because you've been exposed, and then you keep those antibodies for a while. But if you haven't had it for 2 years, there's like this gap amongst all of us, and no one has protection. So we're all just spreading it quite quickly amongst each other.
So would those COVID kids then only have developed their immune systems at age 7 instead of 5 because there was that 2 year, without herd immunity?
I think it's more complicated than that, and I don't think we understand 100% the exact
implications.
Yeah, but it's also, which we didn't chat about, it's also, if you want to build your children's immune system, you don't actually want to give them viruses to make them sick.
Don't throw them in a playpen with all the sick kids.
No, and don't go to chickenpox parties type thing. So, the whole concept of, and I'll go back to vaccines, is that you're exposing them to part of the pathogen. So you'll be exposed to a part of the virus, your body then sees it, they make memory cells to that and protects you from getting severe infection. Something like measles, you never want your child to get measles naturally. I mean, it's the full-blown disease is more dangerous than, that tiny little bit of virus you've been exposed to in the vaccine. So I always say if you want to get your child's immune system developed, don't give them a virus, give them a puppy.
Sure, that's going to be a difficult conversation. Lots of parents get a puppy. So my dad actually used to say, just throw your kids in the dirt, let them play in the dirt.
And he was 100% correct. So that talks to this big concept of the hygiene hypothesis, where, kids that are kept like away from dirt and germs and natural things in the environment are more at risk of allergies and asthma and hay fever. And that's because, there was a big study that showed that children that grew up on farms had a much lower risk of hay fever and asthma. And actually being exposed to all those germs and antigens is good.
Something we didn't really touch on is gut health. So should we be giving our kids probiotics? If so, from what age? Does every child need probiotics? We didn't obviously talk about mums being pregnant and taking probiotics, which I guess is important because it gets passed on to the baby. And then also when you're breastfeeding, probiotics are passed on to the baby. But, once they're in this world, like from what age do we give probiotics and do we carry on giving them?
So, we could have a whole podcast on gut health and probiotics. It's such a huge and developing field. There's so much to... You've got a whole immune system in your gut. I think with probiotics, we're not quite there yet. So there's I think a lot of research that still needs to be done. But where the research is at the moment, it's showing that like certain microbiomes are linked to disease. So the more beneficial bacteria and the better microbiome you have, the less chance of like autoimmune disease and allergies and all those things. But this is a huge field, and I think that our probiotics at this point, they're not going to harm, but I'm not 100% sure if they actually are changing a microbiome. There's lots of things that can change a microbiome. So, that's exactly what you're talking about now. Like from the early years, the way you delivered, Caesar versus natural, that has implications on your microbiome. Breast milk has implications on your microbiome. Skin to skin has implications on your microbiome. So there's loads of things you can do to alter your microbiome, and even just a good diet is better at like treating your microbiome.
And I guess that also ties into exposing your kids to lots of different foods and lots of different fruits and vegetables that also helps the microbiome. Okay, amazing. So I sent Rafi some of our NutriBurst gummies to give to her children, and she sent me a video back, which was just so cute. And in this high-pitched voice, he was going, "Power gummies!" And it was just so adorable. And he was absolutely enjoying them. So, just your opinion on these products. We've got the Super Kids, which is a multivitamin, Mighty Bones, which is calcium and vitamin D, and then Defense Dynamo, which is immune support. Just your thoughts and any feedback you have.
So I have to hide them because they're so delicious. So we have to ration them out. My son is the keeper, and he will say, you're allowed one of these, and one of these.
Okay,
Monday,
good.
Wednesday, Friday. And what we really like about them is that they're sugar-free. They meet all the RDAs. They actually are, they have good amounts in. And the kids love them.
Yeah, they're these cute little troll faces.
They feel like they're getting a sweet, which is great.
Yeah, look, we don't really want to promote giving kids sweets, but on the other hand, you got to do what you got to do to get them to take their vitamins. So if there's one tip to leave with mums when it comes to like fostering a healthy immune system and environment for your kids, what would it be?
Sure. There's a lot of pressure on mums to do everything right. So I think if you focus on like good nutrition, but don't be obsessed with the day-to-days, like look at it over a whole month or a whole week and sort of relax about each meal. If you're worried, the key nutrients are always going to be vitamin D, iron, omegas. Did I leave any out?
Well, magnesium's the new winner.
Magnesium's our fave. We'll try that.
And I guess just a multivitamin to support the picky eaters, right?
Yeah, and all these things can be like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type thing. It doesn't have to be every day. And get your kids outdoors.
Perfect. Rafi, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I think everyone's learned something, whether you're a new mum, an expecting mum, an older mum. There are lots of take-homes here, so thank you so much.
It was fun.
We are always open to new conversations and new topics, so please let us know in the comments below if there's anything you would like us to discuss or any people you would like us to talk to. And furthermore, you can find us on phytoceutics.com.